The McKinsey Global Institute estimates that Africa's GDP will rise from 1.6 trillion in 2008 to 2.6 trillion in 2020. That is barely 80 years away. 20 African companies will have revenues reaching $3 billion. We in Kenya, ladies and gentlemen, are determined to be among those registering such successes. To this end, we are actively implementing our Vision 2030, which rests on 3 pillars. This is a blueprint that is aimed at moving Kenya from a stage of a developing economy to a middle-income economy by the year 2030. And these 3 pillars are the economic objective of Vision 2030, which is to maintain a sustained economic growth rate of 10% per annum for 25 years. Several African countries that have already achieved this, such as Botswana, Equatorial Guinea, and Angola, are well endowed with oil and mineral resources. But we in Kenya are convinced that this growth rate can also be delivered through services in the fields of tourism, finance, business process outsourcing, and value addition through agro-processing and additional industrial processing of imports. Vision 2030's social objective is to create fast, cohesive, and equitable development in a clean and secure environment. To achieve this, the government of Kenya is increasing investment in education programs and aligning them with Kenya's economic needs, as well as focusing on sustainable use of the environment, the provision of water and sanitation services, the expansion of housing, urbanization, and gender empowerment. Vision 2030's political pillar rests on achieving a democratic political system that is issue-based, people-centered, result-oriented, and accountable to the public. The framework for realizing this objective is the new Constitution of Kenya, promulgated on August 27th last year, after overwhelming approval in a countrywide referendum. This was a major step in the constitutional, legal, and institutional reforms implemented by our grand coalition government following the post-election problems of 2008. The new constitution provides for a devolved system of government that will impose greater transparency and accountability in government, and will facilitate tackling rural poverty and inequality by combating regional development imbalances. Land reforms are dealing with historical injustices, and we are tackling impunity while consolidating national cohesion and unity. We have established a new electoral body, and we are reforming our electoral laws. Our police force is undergoing an elaborate transformation. The National Assembly is equally being reformed. All current judges are undergoing a process of vetting to determine their suitability to continue serving. With these reforms, we are looking forward to a peaceful and orderly elections in the year 2012. Kenya is the gateway to East and Central Africa by land, sea, and air. It is the access point for the East African Community market, with its 130 million people, and the common market for Eastern Southern Africa, with the COMESA, which serves 400 million people. Kenya's economy is the largest and most diversified in the region, and has the most developed and sophisticated private sector. Our country is also an exporter of skilled labor. Kenya's human capital is, in fact, one of its distinguishing advantages as an investment destination in the continent. Our Vision 2030 identifies flagship projects to be undertaken by the government, by the private sector, or jointly through public-private partnerships. It is now my pleasure to invite members of my delegation to present to you the following projects, which that will be done later. Nairobi Commuter Rail Project. There will be Jomo Kenyatta International Airport Greenfield Terminal Project. Then there's Konza City Project and the geothermal power development projects. Gentlemen, let me say in conclusion how we are grateful to have an opportunity to come here to New York and to be able to share with you our views about the development of the African continent. Africa, they say, is the richest continent in terms of resources, but it is also the poorest. That is the paradox. The question is, how is it that the continent with the richest natural resources is also the poorest? We know about the history of Africa, but we don't want to continue to live in the past. We want to move forward to the future. And that's the reason why reforms that I've just mentioned briefly are necessary. Africa has now had more than 50 years of independence. We cannot continue all the time to be blaming our past colonialism. We need to move on, and we are moving on. We are no longer talking about aid, because a lot of aid has been pumped in the continent over the last 50 years, with much less to show for it. That aid has just left nothing but debts, so that most countries in Africa are heavily indebted, hippies. Generations that are born inherit debts which they cannot explain what it did. Most of that money found its way back to where it came from. So we are now moving on, and we are saying that what we need is trade and investment. We want more access to markets or goods that are produced in Africa. And we invite also our friends of Africa to come and invest on our continent. That way, we can be able to pull Africa from where it is so that it can join the community of human race as equal partners in development. I want to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to me. Thank you very much.